Hello, I'm Jean. I'm your FM wine guide with another talk about wine. Tonight is going to be my love song to Riesling. Riesling is a grape I think is very underappreciated and misunderstood out in the market today. People often just write it off as sort of an entry-level sweet drink, but it is so much more, so dynamic. Every time the weather changes, I start to think, ooh, it's Riesling season. Because I like Riesling in just about every season. When the fall weather starts to cool down and crisp up, I start thinking about Germany and Oktoberfest, and Germany is the country where Riesling originated as well. And you get that fresh, crisp, sort of apple harvest vibe in the air, and that just tastes like Riesling. Then when it gets cold in the winter, I start thinking about those colder climates in Europe like Germany and Alsace, France, and how they would drink Riesling there with hearty potato and rabbit stew. So it's a white that actually has some hardiness to it that can just sort of warm your bones in the wintertime. Then when the spring starts to warm up again, I start yearning for these really crisp acidic notes and zesty citrus, just to get my juices flowing in my mouth and wake me up for spring. And boy, Riesling does that just fine. And then in the summer when it's super hot and you just need something cold to refresh you, hey, Riesling's got you again. So Riesling for all seasons, I say. This is Boundary Breaks from New York State. I bet you didn't know that New York grows wine. They do a pretty good job. And specifically, they specialize in Riesling. There is a climate in the Finger Lakes area of New York that matches temperature-wise, very similar to the climates of Germany. So perfect for cultivating this same grape to its beautiful ripeness and zesty acidity. And it's like some ancient glaciers, like a big claw of this glacier just scratched through the center of New York State and carved these deep lakes, creating sort of a warming effect to the cold winters that can mild it out and keep the grapes nice and healthy. So German Riesling has a lot of similarities to New York State Riesling, except that it's a different soil type. Germany has more slate, whereas New York has this ancient glacial soil left over, as well as shale and limestone. So there's a little bit difference in the soil, but in the integrity and personality and dynamic attitude of the wine, you still get just that punch of, you can't ignore me. Riesling dares you to keep on drinking. It's got a lot of attitude, I think. So the flavors just laid bare, aromatics are punchy, super fun. A tasting note of Riesling that I will remember for the rest of my life, and I always find these 4 flavors in almost every Riesling, and it's seared into my mind forever because the very first wine book I ever read about 10 years ago was this. It's called An Introduction to Wine, very simple, by Joanna Simon. So it's a fairly simple book, but gets a lot of complex details right, and I appreciate it for communicating complex things simply. That's always my deal as well. But here's the page on Riesling. Always apples. You might get Honeycrisp apple flavor or Granny Smith apple flavor or anything in between, but I almost always taste like a crisp, juicy apple whenever I sip a Riesling. Second is lime. Yes, always this sort of aggressive, zesty citrus note. Honey. Now that might come across as a sweetness in a sweeter Riesling, and especially if it's a botrytized or a dessert style Riesling that's extra concentrated. You really taste the honey then, but you can even taste a little honey in the drier styles. And finally, and this one's going to seem weird, gasoline. There's this strange little playful note of petrochemical of some kind that is natural within the Riesling grape. And it's fun to discover that it can be an acquired taste, and I just enjoy it. So go find a Riesling that you can play with. They come in all sorts of styles and sweetnesses and richnesses, dry to sweet, but they are always crisp and dynamic and hard to ignore. Boundary Breaks. Check it out.